Merry Christmas, everyone! As always, this is Mashit and Smash It, but you can call me Mash or Mash It for short. I know this is a common opinion, but Christmas really is my favorite time of year. Aside from the great atmosphere through it all, even with all the chaos happening at shopping centers and awkward family get-togethers, it's just a special day where you get free stuff from family members. Yeah, don't lie to me and say that it's all about family and togetherness and the joy of giving and all that crap. We all know exactly what we're looking forward to every year. After all, it's a reward for all the other crap we had to put up with all year and having to go through all the trouble of buying gifts for others. I've spent this entire year working and listening to story after story about Hollywood harassment scandals and how much of a schmuck Donald Trump is. Let me just put one day aside to relax and enjoy some presents. But aside from the gifts and parties, one tradition that I've celebrated my entire life is watching myself some good old Christmas specials. My family made a bunch of tapes with all sorts of specials, including the classics like How the Grinch Stole Christmas, A Charlie Brown Christmas, and numerous specials by Rankin Bass. And yes, that includes Rudolph, Frosty, and Santa Claus is Coming to Town. But the tapes also included some slightly more obscure works, such as the special I will be talking about today, Bluetoes the Christmas Elf. Released in 1988 by Lacewood Productions, and based on a book by George Paul Koznick, this special has a very limited availability, being released on a rare VHS, and has an extra feature on a VHS which mainly featured a cartoon by Chuck Jones called A Very Merry Cricket. It also features a theme song by some artist named Valdi. And that's about all I can find from the sources I can pull up. This special focuses on a little elf named Small One, not to be mistaken with the donkey of the same name from the classic Christmas special by Don Bluth back when he still worked for Disney. Small One just wants to help the other elves at Santa's workshop any way he can, and earn himself an actual name, because apparently Small One doesn't count. The problem is, every time he tries to help, he just causes further accidents and puts Santa's delivery on Christmas Eve in jeopardy. Though sometimes it's not actually his fault, because a polar bear keeps antagonizing him throughout the cartoon. He soon befriends a penguin that he names Lonesome, and together they try to find his calling at the workshop. Hijinks ensue! Then Small One discovers that Lonesome is trying to return to his home in the South Pole, and they never explain how he got to the North Pole in the first place. Anyway, Small One tries to help him return home, and more hijinks ensue. This leads to some toys getting left behind, which leads to Santa unknowingly leaving Small One behind at the house that the toys were meant for, and then Small One leaves the kids some toys of his own inside his own stockings. He then freezes outside in his bare feet because either he forgot to put his shoes back on or the shoes in question are just that uncomfortable without socks underneath. Santa soon finds out that the kids somehow got toys that probably smell like feet while he was away, and then discovers Small One freezing with his toes turning blue. To award him for his good deed, Santa finally gives the little elf the name Bluetoes. Yeah, I just spoiled the entire story because this isn't a movie or a cartoon series. This is a 23-minute holiday special that has nothing worth keeping a secret. It's the old story of the misfit trying to fit in. I already talked a bit about it in my Dumbo review. The concept isn't horrible, and the animation, while nothing impressive, is passable for a late 80s TV special. They do create a pretty unique take on Santa's workshop, though it is a weird choice to have all the toys grow on trees. Kinda undermines the elves' legacy of craftsmanship. But whatever, it's just another of many portrayals of how things work in the North Pole. Apparently it's a very magical place. Must be the Aurora Borealis. And now for my biggest issue with this cartoon. The characters. Small One, later known as Bluetoes, is basically just the cutesy kid appeal protagonist. While there's not really anything to him that's unlikable aside from being a little bit annoying, there's nothing about his character that's very compelling. Pretty much the whole point of the cartoon is to make you pity him, but that's not a good character trait, if you can even call it that, when he doesn't really do anything that one can consider relatable. Sure, he tries to be productive around the workshop, and even saves the day for 2 freaking kids at the end, but what else does he even do? He never stands up for himself against the other elves, and believe me, we'll get to them real soon. Hell, even if he just broke down and cried, that would be something. Instead, he just spends the whole cartoon either feeling overly optimistic or moping around feeling sorry for himself. His situation is certainly relatable, being incompetent with everything you try and everyone seeming to hate you for it, but how he goes about this situation just isn't very compelling to watch. I'm not saying I expect depth from a main character of a silly little Christmas cartoon, but for what he has to put up with throughout, I do expect more. Then we have Santa, who's an okay portrayal of the big guy. He's nice and reasonable enough, and has enough Santa charm to him. Lonesome is... annoying, but aside from the grating sound, he makes for an okay comic relief. And then we have the other elves. Yeah, let me put it this way, I hate these characters! They spend the entire cartoon belittling Small One for his incompetence. I mean, I get it, he gets into a bunch of accidents and they have to clean up after him. That came out wrong, but really, you're elves! I think you should know better than most that accidents happen, and sometimes you just have to clean it up. I mean, I'm sure this kind of stuff happens all the time in the North Pole. No workplace is without its incidents. Whose fault it is doesn't really matter. Sure, you can blame Small One all you want, but it's not like he can fix it himself. You yourselves go on and on about how much of a screw-up he is. But most infuriating of all is when they finally encounter the bear that Small One has been blaming for all the accidents that they didn't believe him for. They now know that he's been telling the truth, and they even see the bear walking away from a pile of torn up stockings that Small One just patched up. And what do? They chew out Small One for screwing up again.
I take it those were our stockings?
If you paid a little more attention to your work, you just might get somewhere.
Hello? You saw what happened, right? You got attacked by a polar bear, much like what Small One described? And don't tell me you didn't see him walking away from those stockings. You know what? Of course you did. You just don't want to own up to your own mistakes and continue projecting your insecurities on the little guy. Okay. Yeah. I know your kind work. These elves are horrible! Also, is nobody gonna look at this kid's feet? I mean, those toes are pretty damn blue. I know this is how he gets a new name and occupation, but it's not gonna be worth it if he has to get his feet amputated in the process. Yeah, I won't lie, being named after an incident where you freeze outside in your bare feet isn't really my ideal conclusion. Kind of humiliating, actually. But regardless of what happened, I can only picture what happens after the cartoon ends. Bluetoes rubs his newfound fame in everyone's faces and continuously shames them for essentially bullying him. He grows into a bitter old elf, but at the very least, the other elves know why he's like that. At least, that's what I would go through if I was in his place. Of course, if I was in his place, I'd probably snap and attack someone after the bajillionth finger point. I'm sorry. I'm just getting about 20 years of anger off my chest. On the upside, Valdi's song is nice. Okay, so with all that ranting out of the way, you're probably wondering, do I hate this special that much? Well, I probably would if I didn't grow up with it. Sure, it's infuriating at times, but in all the years I've watched it, I can't really name any repercussions it's had on me. It's frustrating, but harmless. While I wouldn't really recommend it, I wouldn't necessarily discourage you from watching it either. If nothing else, it's okay to just play for your kids. Maybe they'll grow to hate it, and maybe they'll actually like it. Either way, they'll be fine. But I'm still giving Bluetoes the Christmas Elf a 4 out of 10. It's easily in the same league as Princess Ironfan and Mr. Bug Goes to Town, in that they all have decent aspects to them, but each have their own unique, serious problem. Iron Fan is an assault on the senses, Mr. Bug is bland and dull, and Bluetoes is the most frustrating. But in the end, due to being shorter and also due to some level of personal nostalgia, I would definitely call it preferable to the other two. If you're curious, feel free to check it out. If you can even find it. Just don't expect Charlie Brown from it. And with that, this is Mash It and Smash It, wishing you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. New Year.